Welcome to Let's Draw Pokemon. Today we're going to be drawing Squirtle's final evolutionary form, Blastoise. So Blastoise is a pretty big fella in comparison to the little Squirtle. But even though he's bigger and badder, he's still just a pile of shapes. So we're going to focus on drawing out our big shapes first, like always. And then concentrate on filling out the little details. So to start, we're making his big shell, and then a big circle for his head. His legs are fairly circular too, and his tail is a bit reminiscent of cone in shape. So we have that in there too. And then we have his hind leg over there with the claw. He's fully clawed out now. But again, those claws aren't exactly similar. They're not like Charmeleon or Charizard where they're big and sharp and dangerous in that kind of way. They're more of a subtle claw. A little more rounded, a little less, I'm gonna scratch your eyes out. So there's that. His arms overall are just cylindrical again. They have a little more detail on them compared to before. And again, he has his little triangular claws protruding out. There's a little more going on with Blastoise compared to his predecessors. He has water tanks on his back, so he could shoot or blast people away with them. I see what you did there with that name. So we're just adding in the little details on the hands. Of course, we're moving around with the shape of the shell. A little more in depth, a little more detail than say Wartortle or Squirtle. Really adds to Blastoise's design in a good way. A lot of the shell is like curving towards things like the body. So we have a very rough indication of where things are going to be. And then of course we have those little shooters on his back protruding out of the shell. They're just sneaking out near the arms. And again, as you're drawing, you just want to think about the shapes, how everything's connecting. There's a lot of little details that are getting thrown in. Blastoise mouth. He's very smiley, seems very pleased that he's evolved into this big honkin' tank. He doesn't have his little wing ears anymore. They've turned into little pointed ones. If you think back to when we were drawing like the Bulbasaur evolutionary line, they're kind of similar to that. He has a little triangular eye shape. And of course he's just checking out over his back. Making sure nothing's going on that he can't see. So now we can start adding in some additional detail, like the hole opening for that. This part's just going to be encased in shadow. And we're probably going to make this little tube a bit smaller, just so it matches up a little better with the one over here, because it's not that large, which I think we might correct a little too. And of course, when you're drawing this, it's just a cylinder. Just look for the basic shapes, and you're pretty much guaranteed to always be able to decipher how something's constructed, how it's drawn. Just the little shapes. Start with something simple, basic. Like a good example of that is how we drew in the arm. There's additional detail on the arm that we didn't add in yet. So we have this basic, very rough shape. It's just a little cylindrical thing here. But if you look at artwork for Blastoise, it's actually some built-up sections of arm. So instead of just being one full shape, it's actually composed of like 3 different shapes that you just draw out in your sketch. And then you have a nice Blastoise arm going on there. Of course, we can flesh out the tail a little better. And then we have that bottom shell. Find those legs a little more, because they are multi-section now too, instead of just one section. And there we have it. We have a full-fledged, fully drawn out Blastoise to color. But let's get on to our inks. Okay, so we're gonna go and ink this sketch. So first things first, we're gonna fade it out. Make a new layer for our inks. And then just change the brush up and we're good to go. So we want to focus on keeping our lines nice, clean, and crisp, like always. Keeping everything filled in. nicely. Will lend itself well to whenever we go to color this in. Using the fill bucket's a really good strategy, and it makes quick work of all of this. So the nicer our line work is now, the better it'll be whenever we go to color. Now the inks are complete, we're going to move on to coloring. Okay, now for some colors. Pre-picked palette, like usual. Add a sketch and start a color. Okay, so we have the base colors down, now to shade. Blastoise is comprised of a lot of rounded shapes again. Seems to be a very popular theme in Pokemon. Have a lot of roly-poly characters. So we're just starting out by shading in the shell. A lot of form going on with this. Like this is encased in shadow. The light's coming from this direction now. A little bit of shading for each individual shell part. Of course, curving around the shell to give a little more form. You sense that it's rounded. Shading's a bit more complex because there's more forms, more interactions with color. Of course, we have our nice rich blues to add in. Trying to keep in mind where your light source is, how much light each area will get. Playing with the light on the rounded forms. Of course, even light things like the little cannons deserve a little bit of shadow. Okay, now to add in some highlights. Now to add some highlights onto the skin and the shell, all that fun stuff. I think that's about it. So that's Blastoise, Squirtle's final evolutionary form. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you have a great day. Bye.